Now the latest on the backlash facing Alabama Senator Katie Britt and her Republican rebuttal to the president's State of the Union speech last week. Senator Britt used the sex trafficking victim story as she criticized President Biden's border policies. But the story appears to have taken place in Mexico nearly 20 years ago. Now Senator Britt is acknowledging that it didn't happen on Biden's watch.
To be clear, the story that you relayed is not something that's happened under the Biden administration, that particular person.
Well, I very clearly said I spoke to a woman who told me about when she was trafficked when she was 12. So I didn't say a teenager. I didn't say a young woman, a grown woman, a woman when she was trafficked when she was 12.
CNN's Rafael Romo profiled Carla Jacinto, the woman at the center of the story, back in 2017. Rafael, you spoke with Carla once again yesterday. How did she feel about her story being used in the Republican rebuttal to the president's State of the Union address?
Well, she's upset, she's concerned, and she's also worried about her story being used once again, because it's happened in Mexico too, without her permission for political purposes. This is someone I have known since 2014. CNN profiled her story as part of CNN's Freedom Project, which seeks to raise awareness about modern-day slavery. Jacinto says she's very careful about who she gives her testimony to and how and when she does it. So she was very surprised, Wolf, she told me, when she found out yesterday that she was involuntarily put in the middle of a social media storm. This storm was prompted by what appears to be the use of her story during the Republican rebuttal to the State of the Union address by Alabama Senator Katie Britt. I reached out to Carla Jacinto in Mexico City for her reaction, and this is part of what she told me.
I was a victim, it seems to me, starting in 2004. I arrived in Mexico City in 2008 when I was already a survivor.
Were you ever trafficked in the United States?
Not at all, no. I was a victim here in Mexico. In Mexico, I was a victim of human trafficking.
What would you like to tell Senator Britt about what happened?
Well, at this moment, I would like her to get informed a little more about the topic, and that at some point, if she wants to contact me to talk about the topic, she can do so. She can also contact people who have really gone through what she says. I would love to have a pleasant chat with her instead of using it in a political way to gain a position.
And Wolf, CNN has confirmed much of what Jacinto has said in prior reporting, and her story hasn't changed since we first spoke. Jacinto told me no one reached out to her to ask for her permission to use her story as part of a political speech. Someone using my story and distorting it for political purposes, she told me, is not fair at all. Wolf?
Rafael Romo reporting for us. Excellent reporting, Rafael. Thank you very much. Let's discuss this and more with CNN political reporter Elena Treen and CNN congressional correspondent Jessica Dean. Elena, let me start with you. What do you make of Senator Britt's attempts to clean up what she said the other night?
Well, look, Katie Britt has faced a lot of heat for her response, and specifically for sharing this anecdote about Carla. And I think, given the facts that have come out about this and that interview, that excellent interview that Rafael did with her, it's clear that it wasn't the right anecdote for the purposes of what she was trying to underscore, which is that the border under Biden administration is dangerous. That's what Katie Britt is claiming. But clearly, I mean, this woman was not, trafficked in the United States. She said it didn't happen under Biden's administration. And so I think Katie Britt was given an opportunity to try and clean this up. Instead, she deflected. She was very defensive. And I think that she's going to continue to get criticized for it. And we're seeing that play out today.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Elena is exactly right. In suburban women, the people that they were trying to target, the Republicans were trying to target with Senator Britt giving that response, really trying to be, a suburban mom and connect with female voters. That's what they're going to need, those women in those key swing states. Remember in Georgia, for example, Biden won Georgia by some 12,000 votes. It's just these tiny margins. And so they need these swing voters. A lot of times these suburban women perhaps voted Republican in the past, were were turned off by Donald Trump, voted for Biden, but kind of held their noses. Can they convince them to come back to the Republicans, come back to Trump this time? And that is something that I think they were trying to get at with Senator Britt, and now it's just caused more problems for them than anything else.
Let's discuss more now with CNN political commentator and host of PBS Firing Line, Margaret Hoover, and the director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics, Larry Sabato. Margaret, let me go to you first. How do you think Katie Britt is handling all this?
Look, I think the major mistake was that she wasn't clear when she said it up front, because, Jim, we all understand that the cartels are the major, terrible, miserable force behind the crisis at the border. And I was delighted that a Republican woman, of all people, said sex trafficking and told this horrific story. But the fact that she wasn't clear about the details from the beginning and led to this, which led to this implication and confusion that this was the experience of that individual was Joe Biden's fault, has completely undermined a really important conversation and reality that we all ought to be grappling with as we think about the role the cartels are playing and the sexual violence is being perpetrated on innocent victims all over on both sides of the border as we as we try to grapple with this problem.
Yeah, and then the woman at the center of it talked to CNN and said it just wasn't right for Katie Britt to use that story. And Larry, I mean, on top of everything else, I mean, Katie Britt has had to deal with Saturday Night Live. It came up at the Oscars last night. Everybody was sort of poking fun at her sort of breathy, overcranked performance. Let's listen to Scarlett Johansson. She was doing it over the weekend. Let's watch.
I'm worried about the future of our children, and this is why I've invited you into this strange, empty kitchen. Because Republicans wanted me to appeal to women voters, and women love kitchen.
Larry, it's never good when you give the Republican response and it immediately becomes a Saturday Night Live segment. And it was anticipated. I mean, had SNL not done it this weekend, it would have been sort of an epic fail on their part. It was just sort of like served up on a silver platter in a kitchen, I guess you could say.
Yes, Katie Britt deserved an Oscar for most misleading performance ever. I've watched almost all the responses to the State of the Union address since they started in 1966. This is absolutely the worst, not just in terms of that awful anecdote, but also her presentation. I don't know who trained her to speak that way or to vary her emotions in such extremes. You know, most people cite poor old Senator Marco Rubio as having the worst State of the Union response a few years back because he reached for a water bottle off camera because he was parched. That's nothing compared to what she did. These people, Katie Britt and all her colleagues, have dozens of aides and staffers, plus the party researchers. And you mean They put her out there knowing that this is not right?
Yeah. No, and Larry, I mean, kudos to, there was a guy on TikTok, I think Jonathan Katz, who discovered this and sort of blew the whistle on it, and then the media pounced. So good for him. I mean, it just goes to show you there are folks out there paying attention to this stuff. And Margaret, it also highlights how immigration is just going to be this hot button issue all the way until the election. And Donald Trump, just over the weekend, was, hurling more superheated rhetoric on the subject. Let's listen to this, talk about it on the other side.
I will seal the border. I'm going to do it. And I will stop this invasion. I will end the agony of our people, the plunder of our cities, the sacking of our towns, the violation of our citizens, and the conquest of our country. They're conquering our country. These people are conquering our country. They're horrible people.
Now, Margaret, nobody is disputing that there's a problem at the border. Obviously, they need to crack down on what's taking place at the border. But, I mean, who believes this, that there are people conquering our cities and so on? I mean, it just seems so far-fetched that I guess I'm at a loss as to who's buying this stuff.
Well, actually, Jim, I'm really glad you raised this because this is really important. The language that Donald Trump was using there was very explicitly the language of war. the plundering of our cities,
Right.
the combating at the border, all of those verbs are verbs that imply that there is a war at stake. And why is he using the language of bellicosity and of war? Because he is laying the groundwork for being able to use our military if he is elected president on the border. He's trying to justify the use of our military's troops in what will ostensibly be using war powers of the presidency in order to tackle the crisis at the border. And so it's not a mistake that he's using those words. I just want to say about Katie Britt,
Yeah.
Larry, I'm with you. It was a bad performance. But when it comes to these kinds of issues, a future potential president returning to the presidency and using war powers on the border, Katie Britt is one of the rare Republicans. There are too few these days who behind closed doors is deliberately reasoned and sensible. And so it just speaks to the tragedy of the Republican Party and its ownership by Donald Trump, that they're painted into a box and can't even be intellectually honest about the debate about immigration when they are on television defending their side of the argument.